Thank you, Priti, for giving a very kind introduction. At the outset, I thank the director of the program and all those people who are associated in organizing this program, who have been very kind in inviting me to deliver this lecture. I welcome the guests, Professor Srivastav, Professor Biswal, and many others. Actually, I can see them. It's really pleasure talking to all of you. And I also welcome all the participants from different disciplines, sciences, social sciences, and humanities. Today's topic, understanding research. I have to be very succinct in presenting the whole understanding of research, cutting across these different disciplinarian people who have come. Although it means now in 2020 policy, one of the primary thing approach that is to be adopted is emphasized as interdisciplinary approach. From that point of view, we should not be rather we should not be distinguishing different disciplines. Nevertheless, one should have a clear-cut understanding about one's own discipline first, then go to interdisciplinary aspect. So possessing elementary knowledge about the cognitive disciplines related to your own parent discipline and having a broad outlook will help you to develop this idea of interdisciplinary approaches. So today I will try my best to explain certain things that can be intelligible to all those people who have assembled here to listen my lecture. I shall be sharing some PPTs, but I would request the participants to listen to me very carefully rather than only concentrating on PPT, because I have actually I do not have the habit of presenting through PPT, but since students from different disciplines are there and they would be intending to go through further, I thought some slides, if they are shared, they can be actually used by the participants, and therefore I will go to the presentation. And now, Priti, how do I, what do I do now?
So you have to share the screen.
First I will share the screen.
Yes, sir.
No.
पहले
Okay.
अपना पीपीटी ऑन करो,
ऑन कर दिया,
ऑन कर दिया, फिर इसका शेयर स्क्रीन कर दीजिए.
Share screen, sir.
शेयर स्क्रीन किया तो फिर उसका आया पीपीटी आया.
मैं मेरे को authority दी sir.
Is it all right now?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay.
So you can make it on presentation mode also.
Where is that presentation mode?
Sir, just below your slide, there is one box, right side, sir. Extreme right. Down, little down, sir. Yes. Sir, left side. There is a kind of container, if you will see, that is a symbol for presentation mode.
At the top, if So, but is this visible now?
Yeah, that is visible, sir.
Okay, that will be better because I shall be in a position to see some of you. Otherwise,
Okay, sir.
it will appear that I am talking to a blank slate.
So that is
Okay,
good.
okay.
Yeah.
Friends, when you talk about research and you go through the books, you come across several definitions and meaning. I have deliberately chosen a generic meaning of research that will cut across different disciplines. Now, in this, if you are seeing the PPT, you will come across some of the concepts like systematic, scientific, then you come across about knowledge, then you come across about insights, and so on and so forth. In other words, when I'm talking about this word scientific, you have to understand that scientific thinking is based on logic, systematic. And therefore, when you are undertaking a research, you have to be very systematic. It is only then you will be able to get what you have not yet got and what you actually wish to get. Now, through the process of research, what happens? Things which we do not know, they are pushed back. And because of this systematic and scientific activity, we discover new insights. We discover new knowledge, which helps us to design new products, solve our problem, and also adds to the fund of knowledge. And therefore, it is a process. It is a continuous ongoing process. You do not stop at a particular point and say, I have completed the task. You have completed your own investigation, somebody else will once again start, and so on, and further somebody else will start. Like this, the whole research process, is a very systematic inquiry. Now, this last line you come across, these two words. So time and again, you are engaged in finding new things and solving problem, adding to the fund of knowledge, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the basic thing that you can take from this slide is the word knowledge. Now, does it mean that the moment we are engaged in research and what we get through the process is knowledge? Now, this is a very debatable point, which takes us to our next slide. What is knowledge? Now, I shall not be philosophical, because when you talk about knowledge, there are many theories that can be found. But when we are engaged in scientific inquiry, we consider knowledge which is rationalistic, derived logically, and empirically tested. Now, when we believe in this kind of knowledge, the, the, the outcome of the research is not always in the form of knowledge. They are actually mere information. And therefore, this takes us to the next slide to discuss what is information and what is knowledge. Now, information is something that we get it. It may be hard fact. And when these facts, they are put together within a particular context, the meaning and the value changes. For instance, if you are, let us say, passing through a traffic, a major traffic, you come across an yellow light. Now, the moment you are approaching the traffic and you see the yellow light, it gives you an idea that red is going to come and I must slow down the vehicle in order to stop. Now, when you proceed, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
And there was some problem here.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Dear participant, do not scribble on the slides. It is very, it is invisible and somebody cannot see it properly. So kindly look at your actions.
So when you proceed from that point and then you come across another point wherein the same yellow light is there, but it is blinking. Now there you get an information or insight that there is some sensitive point beyond this and you must drive cautiously. So when the phenomenon is the yellow light, but in one context, it gives you different idea, and in another context, it gives you different idea. And so, when information is put in different context, it affects the meaning. And so, we can say that all information that we receive is not knowledge. But when we consider something as knowledge, which I told you in the previous slide, which is rationally derived and empirically tested, that becomes knowledge. So all knowledge can be information, but all information is not knowledge. Now, going back to the same sentence, in the beginning when I was talking about the meaning of research, we primarily get information through research. And when we put these information and we do the process, we are able to derive knowledge. That is why long back, actually, in our department, many researches were carried out as far as classroom climate is concerned. Many researches, I'm talking of 60s and 70s. And there was a debate whether what has been found through our research, are they really directly applicable? And this debate continued, for which actually a meta-analysis was done, and the title was, "What Researchers Have to Say About Classroom Climate." Many studies were conducted. So we actually get information and they are actually put in a proper context. Logically, we derive something, deduce something, and then we empirically test all those. And then we say, yes, this is what is the knowledge that we have derived. Now, before I go to the next slide, when we are talking about research, a question actually comes to the mind. Now, with so much of advancement, we are able to carry out research in a much more systematic manner compared to the previous years. When I'm talking of previous years, you can go back as far as possible, starting from the people who were in the nomadic state also. This means that the understanding of research as we have obtained now because of the advancement should not mean that no such activity was being carried out in the earlier times. Maybe the way we carry out researches or research in different disciplines now might be it not existing exactly in the same or similar manner in earlier times. Nevertheless, if you ask me, I am of the opinion that even in earlier times, people were engaged in research. I call them as primitive, primitive ways of acquiring knowledge. Now, please remember, you may argue, looking at this slide, that even now also we use these terms while carrying out research. But why I have termed it as primitive? Because of some reason. Let me explain one by one. See, if you talk about the nomadic times, knowledge was gained through observation. Now, observation in a very conscious manner as it is being done now was not existent. Nevertheless, they were also observing, like which fruit is edible, which time of the year a particular tree can have what kind of fruit, and so on and so forth. So knowledge was actually accumulated through observation, through experience. Now, when you talk of experience, the same explanation. Now, because of the development of empiricism, we use experience, where when our senses are involved in it, and we gain knowledge. But when you go to the earlier times, people were gaining experience sometime consciously and sometime unconsciously. And that is how, if you meet a farmer and ask him, sowing to the soil in a field, what kind of paddy will grow? Now, the difference then and now, you observe from this. The farmer had experience, and therefore he or she will be able to tell you that on this kind of a soil, this type of seed will grow. In contrast, now you talk about this, take an ABSc agriculture expert. He will not say instantly which type of seed will grow in this soil. He will take soil, go to the laboratory, check it, and then come and give you what kind of a seed can grow in this. Whereas this I'm talking of a, consciously you are trying to know it. Whereas if you talk about earlier times, olden days, experience was one of the main source of gaining knowledge. Trial and error. We have studied this in our psychology, educational psychology classes. You gain knowledge through trial and error basis. Then authority. We depend authoritative source of knowledge. The authority may be an institution, maybe an individual, or maybe an encyclopedia, and so on and so forth. In the sense, if it is coming from an authoritative source, we accept that as knowledge. Now, when you talk about this authority, again, different authoritative sources at times show different types of information. Now, which one is correct, which one is not correct, we don't know. But we consider both are authoritative. And therefore, we are in a dilemma. Now, all these four, what I have mentioned here, actually suffer from one major limitation, and that is uncritical acceptance of an idea to be true. And that is why I called it primitive. See, now we teach to our students that any information that comes to you, you must critically examine the validity of the knowledge or information that you have got, and then you should proceed ahead. While these different means which is mentioned here provide us sometimes very valuable, valid knowledge, but by and large, they actually suffer from one major limitation, that is uncritical acceptance of an idea to be true. Now, this is the main problem. And so, we look for something better way of knowing. And this brings us to the next slide. I use these two terms, rationalism and empiricism. Now, rationalism is a way of gaining knowledge through reasoning process, through logical process. Now, you would see it involves inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. Now, as far as this whole idea of these two reasoning, inductive and deductive, are concerned, deductive reasoning has been the contribution of Aristotle, whereas inductive reasoning is the contribution of Bacon. And if you see the time, when you are talking of Aristotle, you are talking about 300 BC. And when you are talking about Bacon, you are talking about 16th century. And therefore, for many years, we had this deductive reasoning. That is, from a known knowledge, we examine a particular phenomena and we derive a conclusion. Now, Aristotle has technically termed it as syllogism. Now, a syllogism contains two premises and a conclusion. Major premise, minor premise, and conclusion. Now, it has two conditions. In order for a deductive conclusion to be true, the syllogism must satisfy two conditions. One, all the premises have to be true. Two, terms and concepts that are used in the syllogism must convey same meaning. See, I give you an example. Famous example, all men are mortal. X is a man and therefore X is mortal. Major premise, minor premise, and conclusion. All crows are black. X is a crow, therefore X is black. Now, many a times we use the logic without looking at the terms that are used in the logic and without examining the major and minor premise. And therefore, even though the conclusion is derived in a logical manner, but it is fallacious. Sometimes we use a technical term, fallacious argument. Like all crows are black, X is black, therefore X is crow. Now here you see the term black is used, the meaning in major premise differently than in minor premise. Even I give always means famous example, which I actually found while discussing with a mathematician. I gave you the clue, but if you are in a position to anyone who can find the fallacy in it. All numbers are numbers. All numbers are equal with respect to their numberness. Therefore, all numbers are equal. Can anyone find where lies the fallacy? Anybody? Can anyone respond to this? Nobody? Feel free. Any students with background in mathematics or science? Nobody? Why everybody has become a mute listener? Find the logical fallacy in this. Am I audible to all those?
Yes, yes, sir, you are audible.
Once again, let me repeat. All numbers are numbers. All numbers are equal with respect to their numberness, and therefore all numbers are equal. I give you a clue. One of the premise is untrue, not true. Which is that premise? You have decided not to speak, or you don't? Please, we'll proceed further. There are so many things to tell. One of the premise that I spoke to you is not true. Which is that premise in this logic?
So the last one.
No, that is the
So the second
conclusion.
one, I think that's the. So the second assertion is wrong, I guess.
Yeah, the second one, sir.
So the minor premise is wrong because numberness is a literal word.
All of you agree to this?
Yes, sir.
The minor premise, yeah.
Yes, sir.
No. You all are wrong. You talk to a mathematician. Minor premise is all numbers are equal with respect to their numberness. The major premise is all numbers are numbers. When you talk to a mathematician, they will say, no, sir, all numbers are not numbers. There are different types of numbers. So when you begin from a known thing, that itself is wrong, even though you have applied logical rules, your conclusion will be wrong. When you are talking all numbers are numbers, mathematicians will say, no, sir, all numbers are not numbers. There are different types of numbers. Which type of numbers you are talking of? Are you talking about rational numbers or any other number? I did not mention that. And therefore, coming back, many a times we are under illusion that we think we have applied proper logical rules, but conclusion is not true. So this deductive reasoning tells us that for arriving at a valid conclusion, true conclusion, both the premises have to be true, that is number one. And number two, the different concepts involved in the syllogism must convey same meaning. Now, this actually idea continued, or way of deriving knowledge continued for many centuries. Now, in the 16th century, Francis Bacon gave this idea of inductive reasoning. That is, when the researcher observes about a phenomena over a prolonged period of time, very long period of time, and also comes to know in the literature about the same phenomena. On the basis of these observations, the researcher draws an inference, and that is actually known as inductive reasoning. Now, in the books, you will find all mammals that has ever been observed has lungs, and therefore all mammals have lungs. Now, when you put these two, the inference that is drawn from or through the process of inductive reasoning serves as the major premise for deductive reasoning. All the mammals have lungs. Rabbit is a mammal, and therefore rabbit has lungs. So, inductive reasoning helps us to draw inference about the phenomena that we observe over a period of time, past also, present, and its likely occurrence in future. This please keep in mind. I will, in the end, there are certain things I want to tell. I will be linking to this particular idea. So, the inference that has been drawn serves as major premise to the deductive reasoning. Now, both these reasoning, inductive and deductive, for the first time, unlike the previous slides, wherein we used to gain information and knowledge, but we were to accept it uncritically. Whereas when you look at this process of gaining knowledge, it is acceptable. It is valid. Now, but many a times, this can also be misleading. Like we know that where there is smoke, there is fire. Can there be smoke without fire?
No.
There can be smoke without fire too. If you are interested, you see National Geography. There can be smoke. So many a times what I am saying is that simply logically when you are deriving something is not enough. It has to be seen in empirical way, and that is empiricism. भाई participants घर में बैठे हो तो बंद करो अपने वो ऑडियो में. Now, any knowledge that we actually derive involving our senses, see, hear, touch, feel, etc., that is empirically or empirical way of gaining knowledge. So when these two, rationalism and empiricism, when they are employed together, we gain knowledge. See, the primary goal of this inductive reasoning is to identify and observe ideas and patterns from the data, which will help you to build a theory. And deductive reasoning helps us to check what is being derived through inductive process. So these two, inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning, one helps in theory building and the other one is theory testing. Both are applied in our research process. Look at this figure. This is typical of a scientific inquiry, that you have a theoretical base, and through the process of deduction, you generate certain hypotheses, and then you observe them and test, and then you come out with the final idea. Such ideas, they help us in the development of a theory, that is through the process of induction. So, like this, it is a constantly ongoing process. Now, what are the characteristics of a scientific inquiry? Now, once again, let me remind you, the moment I'm talking of scientific, I'm talking about systematic logical inquiry. Please don't understand that it is only I'm talking physical sciences. No, I'm talking of a systematic inquiry. Now, one of the primary characteristics is replicability. Things which you have found, you should be in a position to replicate it. Please keep this in mind, because when in the end, I will once again link this idea, replicability, and earlier I talked about rationalism, all those things together. I am talking about, in general, cutting across different disciplines. Second is precision. You need to be precise to the point with regard to your inquiry. The instruments that are employed, the means through which information is collected, they must be precise. Now, this also keep in mind, this slide, whole slide. First is replicability. Second one is precision. And third one is falsifiability. Now, this is a term propounded by Karl Popper. Now, falsifiability means if a theory is stated in such a way that it can be disproven, then that theory is a scientific theory and it is acceptable. I will explain this. Theories that cannot be falsified are not scientific, and any such knowledge is not scientific knowledge. Now, when Popper is talking about falsifiability, that means he is talking about absolute and relative. There are two types of truth that we generally talk of. One truth with capital T and one truth with probable truth. Now, absolute truth, there is nothing called absolute truth. That means you say God exists. A scientist will not believe this because you cannot prove this. Now, whatever proof that you try to present, if a contrary evidence is being found, that is not accepted. And that is how you will find these different people belonging to different religious beliefs. They have different means. But even if those means one adopts, one is not sure as to whether one has got that absolute truth. In simple terms, actually, what is being understood here is that when you derive an idea and you develop knowledge on the basis of it, let us say that people who who are having stable emotional quotient, they take rational decisions. People who are emotionally stable take rational decisions. Now, this is a scientific knowledge because you can find some people who are emotionally stable but not able to take rational decision. That means there are some other factors that is coming in the way. And so your quest for knowledge continues. In contrast, if you, the proposed theory proves it, then that means there is nothing beyond to know. Now, had it been so, we would not have grown now, or our knowledge would not have grown. Whatever we knew,
This meeting is being recorded.
idea that we propose scholars. For a particular or about a particular phenomena. And those explanations may be contesting to each other. A scientist always accepts the simplest or logically most economical explanation.
This meeting is being recorded.
Which actually has caused something in your body, and it can lead to death. Now, there are many other symptoms associated with this headache. Now, when a doctor examines by employing this Occam's razor, that because you are dehydrated and suffering from common cold, consequently you are having headache. So this Occam's razor, Occam is an individual. Razor is when you prune out, and you come the contesting explanations about the phenomena. When they are pruned properly, you derive some kind of some conclusion. And that is actually the principle of parsimony. Now, these four, replicability, precision, falsifiability, and parsimony, they are the primary characteristics of a scientific inquiry. Now, we are coming to a very important part. So far, all that I have spoken, you might be getting an idea. Really talking about scientific method. And the origin of this scientific method is again from natural sciences, because uh, the characteristics, the forms of scientific inquiry, and so on and so forth that I have spoken,
Hello, voice is not audible.
Sir, you seems to be offline.
Yes, please kindly wait as
Okay,
Panikriti
okay,
got
okay,
disconnected.
okay.
Yeah.
अभी allow करो मैं
Connected now. We can see. We can see you, sir. सर अब आप प्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं शेयर स्क्रीन. Yes, sir, it is visible now.
Okay. Now we are. I was talking that the general understanding so far would be that I'm talking about natural science. Previous slides when I'm talking about scientific inquiry. This is not the case. That is in general in any discipline when you carry out researches. But when you look at the historical aspect, primarily this process of inquiry, it appears more coming from or emanating from physical sciences. Now, when you have social sciences, humanities, and sciences together, and you are engaged in research work, then there are certain assumptions which will lead you how scientific inquiry can be carried out in different disciplines. The very first assumption is ontological. That means the existence of reality. Whether reality exists independent of human cognition or it is dependent upon the knower. Now, the way you try to explain it like nominalism. Now, realist means what you see that is independently existing. Anybody can see it. In other words, the phenomenon has an independent existence, and that is real. Now, the moment you say that it depends on the perception, and there is a relationship between the knower and the known, you are talking about like a nominalist. Nominalist in the sense the object of thought which depends on the perception of the individual comprises of words that comes from the cognition of the individual. And therefore, there is a relationship between the knower and the known. In contrast, there is a belief that reality exists independent from the knower. Then the next assumption is related to your epistemology. That is related to the nature of knowledge. Whether knowledge is hard, tangible, or whether knowledge is soft, personal experience. If you say knowledge is hard, tangible, it can be given to different people, then you are holding a positivistic epistemology. If you believe that knowledge is soft, personal, experiential, you are holding an anti-positivistic epistemology. Similarly, with regard to human nature, human nature can be perceived voluntary, and human nature can also be perceived as deterministic. Now, with regard to methodology, when you believe that, or you believe in ontological reality that is singular, and you believe that knowledge is hard and personal, hard and tangible, human nature is deterministic, you will be engaged in a kind of research work which will try to discover the general laws and principles that governs the entire physical and social world. And if you believe that reality is dependent upon the knower, there is a relationship between the knower and the known, and you believe knowledge as personal, experiential, and human nature is voluntary, then you are engaged in ideographic research. Ideographic research means you are trying to understand the society and social interaction process that is going on. Unlike nomothetic research, which tries to discover the general laws and principles that governs the entire physical and social world. In contrast, ideographic researches, it tries to understand, and therefore there is nothing that can be discovered. It tries to understand the social interaction process. Now, when you are doing research work, these two set of assumptions will guide you, or the way you actually believe in these kind of assumptions will guide you what kind of a research work in your discipline you can carry out. Now, when it comes to physical sciences, all these characteristics which I talked, this one, they are strictly adhered to. Whereas when it comes to social sciences and humanities, many of these things are not feasible or plausible. For instance, you cannot, even if you replicate, you will not be able to find the same. When it comes to precision, with whatever accuracy you may do, try to get things, there is always a constant source of error. It cannot be error. Now, the other two, they are applicable both in social sciences and in natural science. And therefore, how you align yourself, how you believe yourself, accordingly, the research process will begin. See, if, in social science, no social science produces laws that once established last unchanged. No social science proposition can be proven logically without depending on a usually expensive and always contestable report of assumptions. All social generalizations are inherent all social generalizations are inherently probabilistic. None are determinate and all depend on logic. I used the word certis paribus. This means actually everything remains constant. This is actually an economic term that is used. For instance, the law of supply, all an increase in price results in an increase in quantity supplied when other factors are constant. That is certis paribus, means all other things are being equal, in the sense that when we are talking about natural sciences, we talk of generalizations. But when we apply the same methodology in social science, And therefore, it is possible that when you are engaged in social science research, you have a possibility of holding certain assumptions and applying them in social science. The same can be vice versa when it comes to natural sciences. But disciplines like, or you can say hard sciences, it is not possible to have ideas quite similar in thinking in social sciences. Now, the following lecture after me will indicate what are the different ways of carrying out researches in sciences and social sciences in greater detail. Now, why I said so in the end is because all that I have presented, they have actually systematic development right from, see, the term science, scientist, scientific method, they have been evolved sometime during the 19th century. Now, if you go back to the literature, in 3rd century BC, knowledge which was primarily seen in terms of theological percepts based on faith was challenged by the Greek philosophers. And the significant one is Aristotle. And his work on metaphysics clearly stated that knowledge can be derived and we shall be able to understand the whole universe through systematic logical reasoning called rationalism. And his work on metaphysics distinguished or separated theological ideas from your ontological ideas to universal science. In theological ideas, we believe in God, etc., etc. And when we talk of ontological ideas, we talk about something which is not common man's understanding. Now, by the later part in the 16th century, when Francis Bacon gave this idea of inductive reasoning, he emphasized knowledge acquisition is an empirical activity. Prior to Bacon, knowledge was primarily derived through logical reasoning. But Francis Bacon's idea of inductive reasoning helps us to acquire knowledge in an empirical means. Now, around this time, even though both rationalism and empiricism was available to the human being, the dominance of religion, particularly Christianity, in most part of the globe had not permitted science to come out and tell the whole world that how knowledge can be derived through observation and experimentation. The dominance of these religious institutions, I am talking of Christianity, was so much that science was being used to serve religion rather than helping the humanity to go further. Now, this I am talking about the actually medieval times, and it was the dominance of the any dispute that would arise in the society. The final arbitrator was the Pope of the Church. So, from this dominance, when you proceed towards modern phase, the actually the dwindling, and science actually started. There is an upsurge of science. People started believing in observation and experimentation. So from a theological dominance or metaphysical dominance to a rational and scientific way of gaining knowledge is seen as a positive move. And the first individual who observed this whole idea was Auguste Comte, who subsequently coined this term positivism. So it is a doctrine, it's a school of thought. But in this manner also, you will observe one thing, that the characteristics inherent in social science are seen almost the similar way that of the characteristics of natural science. And therefore, the belief that uh, the scientific characteristics which I showed you, that is replicability, precision, falsifiability, and parsimony, can be applied in social science too. But remember, if you look at this last slide, no social science produces laws that once established last unchanged. And therefore, to what extent you can rely on those kind of thinking and apply that research idea or approach in social science. So, the believe that through scientific means it is possible to solve the problem of human society, and to a large extent may be true, but there are many facets of social sciences or in the society which requires a different kind of understanding, where you are not in a position to discover any general laws and principles that govern the society. And even if there are some laws and principles, they are constantly undergoing change. And that's how the human growth and human civilization is growing. So to those aspects, if you employ this kind of a methodology, you will not be able to get the root of it or get the actual idea why it is so. And therefore, the whole canvas of different disciplines, whether it is science, social science, or humanities, is an arena where it is possible for a researcher to employ several means or several ways of conducting research. There is no one way that can be applicable cutting across different disciplines. Now, what are those approaches? You will come to know in the subsequent sessions that will follow. With this, I end my presentation here. If you have anything to ask, you are most welcome.
Is there anyone to ask the questions so that we can move further discussions?
So thank you so much. So it was quite an informative session and we really had a good insights. Thank you so much.
I'm really sorry. I don't know. This is first time I had experienced internet problem. I hope in the subsequent session I may think of going to the department because I had internet problem in my home. Today somehow I'm really sorry for that. Time and again there was actually the connection was being lost.
It
Sorry
happened
for
one
that.
time, but it was
But
recording point and we listened to it very nicely. So shall we end, sir? If there is no discussions.
your choice.
Thank you. Thank you.
So today we end the session here only, and we will join tomorrow at sharp 3 a.m. So request all to join on time. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.